All right, welcome everyone to another live streaming event from Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Film Archive. I'm Sean Carson. On behalf of the Museum and Film Archive, I'd like to welcome you all to tonight's exciting event. We're calling this show To Hell and Back, Artists Explore the Post-2020 Landscape. So this will be a very different type of event than we've done before, because this is not a performance event per se, although we'll show some clips of video and other things. But instead, this is mostly going to be a conversation among three leading artists here in the Bay Area, who we're really proud to host. Let's see, I'll mention at the outset that if you're watching us on YouTube, which I believe is the only way to be watching us, there is a little chat box on the side. So if questions or comments occur to you at any point during the run of this show, feel free to type them in there. And towards the end, we'll do some sort of Q&A. I'll be asking the artists questions from that list of questions that folks post. So feel free to interact that way. I'll also make a very sincere pitch to all of you to say being on YouTube is sort of new to us. We've been doing it for a long time, but in this day, pandemic times, being on YouTube is all important. So if you can, hit that subscribe button next to the YouTube thing and subscribe to our feed. And it's exciting for us because it really means something to us. We know that someone is interested in our work and things that we do. And I think it'd be good for you too, because we have an amazing variety of programs, and you'll learn about them right away if you are subscribed. So please do that. Please like the video, all those things that people always tell you to do on YouTube. Okay, so I want to start by introducing PC Muñoz, and I'm going to read his bio here to do this all officially. So PC Muñoz is a recording artist, musician, and writer based in San Francisco. His diverse body of work as an artist and producer includes Grammy-nominated contemporary classical music, acclaimed funk and avant-garde projects, and compositions for film, dance, and multimedia. He is a current Mosaic Silicon Valley Artist Fellow, a former board governor for the San Francisco chapter of the Recording Academy, that's the Grammys, and a former Equilibrium Fellow at the Loft Literary Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Please welcome my friend PC Muñoz.
Hey, thank you, Sean. I wanted to start by talking a little bit about our long history, because I'm very grateful for your support and for Berkeley Art Museum Pacific Film Archive support of my work. We've been doing shows for a while now.
Sometimes it has been several years now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sometimes in conjunction with JCC of the East Bay. Mm-hmm. They started getting conceptual when we started doing, I think, positively Alphabet Street, which was the Dylan and Prince mashups. Dylan lyrics with Prince music and vice versa, and the funk version of John Cage's 433, the funkiest version of John Cage ever. So it's been a lot of fun, and every year we do this, and I had no idea that this year would be a Zoom event until we started talking about how we were going to pull this off this year. Right. Like every artist, I've been thinking about the future of performing. And 2020 was such a curveball of a year for artists, and venues closed and schools closed, and artists who are uncomfortable with technology or who reject technology on principle are left wondering, what am I doing? It makes you wonder about the bigger picture. What is this era? In what ways has our work permanently changed? I know I have a number of colleagues who are like, well, I'm done. I'm getting my MBA and I'm out. On top of that, in music specifically, there's the impact of digital delivery, things like Spotify, which Cellista and I share an opinion on, which offer access but not adequate compensation for musicians. And also, specifically for music, on top of that, for me, one of the biggest things that I think a lot about in the music world is this idea of prophecy. Traditionally, songmakers have had different kinds of roles, from entertainment to ritualistic and liturgical. But there was a period in popular song when musicians had this prophetic role. And I don't mean foretelling the future, but like speaking truths about contemporary human existence that were not being acknowledged by ruling institutions. You think about Bob Marley, Gil Scott-Heron, Bob Dylan, Public Enemy, people like this. I don't think that's the only meaningful mode of music, but it was an important part of American popular music and the mode for a while. And I'm not totally convinced that musicians hold that sort of juice anymore, if people look to us for that anymore. I think people now look to us more for the entertainment end, That might not be a bad thing, and I might be totally wrong, but it's one of the things that I wanted to explore today. And thinking about the way we document every single moment of our lives now got me thinking into this video we're about to show, because I feel like that has changed the way we tell stories. It has completely changed the way we make myth and the way we can access memory. So we're going to show this clip called I Remember Her by Nate Carr with Galley Notes. It's basically this guy, Nate Carr, trying to write his memoirs, but because his fact checker and editor is particularly persnickety, every memory he writes and submits gets brutally debunked and dismantled because the easily accessible documentation from the actual events tell a totally different story. So it's supposed to be sad and funny. It's very short. The long form version will be about 10 minutes, but this one's just under 2. It's presented here as a kind of video story with illustrations by Lindsay Santiago, who's a visual artist I work with a lot. So this is I Remember Her by Nate Carr with Galley Notes.
I remember her. In fact, I remember everything. The way she walked onto the school bus, her puffy pigtails, her rainbow jacket. The way she laughed when I said something funny. I remember it all. She dressed like Raggedy Ann in 7th grade for Sadie Hawkins Day. When she sat down on the bus that morning, I moved close to her and told her my middle name was Andy. She laughed out loud. Then she smiled and moved her mouth close to my ear. "You're my Andy," she whispered.
Nate, FYI, this did not check out in research. Via Facebook Messenger, Heather denied that she ever dressed like Raggedy Ann, and it looks like archived photos from that year's Sadie Hawkins celebration bear this out. Going further, Heather also indicated that she never whispered to you or any boy on any bus ever. Gonna have to strike this one. Ed.
All right. Sorry, it took me a minute to get my video back on. Welcome back. That was just so fun, PC. I've seen that 3 or 4 times now, and it gives me a chuckle every time. I appreciate that. Very nice. Really, very well done. I like the old school record scratch too, just like in an 80s movie. It's very nice. So tell me, I mean, you've told us a little bit about what kind of the idea behind inspiring, what inspired the, this sort of over documentation, I guess, of our everyday lives these days. Everyone's just posting pictures to the internet of every single thing they do every day, etc. Is there something about that ties into these 2020, this coronavirus times at all? I mean, or are they, is this sort of a separate track for you?
It's a little both. I mean, I think one of the reasons why I started working on it was because we were in the pandemic. So
Sure.
I was thinking about, also I was thinking about the state of the album, because it's a difficult thing to do. And I love albums. But they're, we seem to be moving away from an album world where people, put songs that they like to listen to on, on playlists, and they listen that way. I still love listening to albums from start to finish because I think sequencing albums is an art, and I appreciate it. But I love singles as well, and it's interesting to think of what ways musicians can create new work and deliver them. So in this case, it was kind of me trying to merge my writer side and my musician side, and create a different kind of work, not specifically a music video for a song, but a piece of writing that had some sound design and some voice. And in this case, my first attempt at almost like comedy.
Yeah, for sure. Very nice. So yeah, I think that all certainly comes through in the experience of watching the video, for me anyway. And yeah, I can imagine it, of course, working as purely as audio, but somehow the video component just gives it this seeing the words on the screen, or the images here and there, and especially the unraveled sweater at the end.
Yeah.
These are things that add they add something to it. It's obviously not a it could stand alone as an audio work, I think, but there's something, at least this 2-minute part, but there's something very compelling about seeing it in that form. We're seeing a lot of performing artists these days, especially musicians, trying to just have a larger impact by doing everything for video, because people won't sit and just listen to a record. So creating, obviously we've known that since the MTV days, but there's something especially now when we can't go out and experience things live. I think there's sort of this longing to have something, all our senses be engaged, and especially especially our visual field, I think, because we're just so used to absorbing information that way all day long now, whether we're on Zoom for work, or watching the television, watching Netflix, and all those sorts of things.
I think that's accurate. It's when you make sound now, it's almost like if it doesn't have a visual component, it's some sort of visual component, it feels like something's missing. Is for a lot of people that encounter the work, they're looking for a visual, even if it's a still image that just sort of goes with it. Mm-hmm. It's interesting that way. That it's another one of the things that I think all artists have had to consider when creating new work.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so this is very exciting, because I could talk with PC all day, but we also have two other amazing people we want to bring into the conversation to talk with. So again, I'm going to read a couple of bios here, and we'll have them join us one at a time. So first, I'm going to ask to join us Robert Moses. Robert Moses has created numerous works of varying styles and genres for his highly praised dance company, Robert Moses Kin. His work explores topics ranging from oral traditions in African American culture to the nuanced complexities of parentage and identity, and the simple joys of expressive power of pure movement. In addition to his work with Robert Moses Kin, Moses has choreographed for Alvin Ailey American Dance, the San Francisco Opera, Ailey 2, and other esteemed dance companies. He has choreographed for the SFFF, the Lorraine Hansberry Theater, New Conservatory Theater, Los Angeles Prime Moves Festival, and Olympic Arts Festival. Robert Moses Kin has earned 8 Isadora Duncan Awards, we call those the Izzies, for work supported with support from the National Endowment for the Arts, New England Foundation for the Arts, William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, James Irvine Foundation, and many others. The company performs its 2 annual home seasons in San Francisco. So please welcome Robert Moses.
Hello.
Robert, it's great to have you here joining the conversation. Thank you very much. And I guess before we move on to this, I'll bring in Cellista as well, and then we can have everyone talk. So Cellista is a nomadic performance artist. She creates stage poems, that is, narrative multimedia works, after those of the artist Jean Cocteau, which juxtapose seemingly disparate elements. Her stage poems are acts of resistance art, investigating the ruptures of daily life. They are politically concerned, observant, and revealing, breaking down the borders between audiences and performers, disciplines, genres, and beliefs. Her work is based on her belief that creating art is a radical act. I think we all agree with that. One that illuminates fragmentations and allows us as witness to attend to our collective wounds and transfigure them. Cellista is a former San Jose Arts Commissioner and currently serves as an elected chapter governor on the San Francisco Recording Academy Board, the Grammys. She recently completed her master's in business at Berkeley College of Music. Now that's the other Berkeley, the one with 2 E's over in Boston. And her next stage poem, Pariah, is set to be released in spring 2021. Cellista, welcome also to the conversation.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Of course. So we have, Cellista, we'd probably categorize you as a performance artist and musician. PC, of course, a musician primarily, also a poet, and Robert, of course, a choreographer. So we have a nice range of artistic disciplines, that we're kind of covering, I think.
Hey, Sean.
Yes.
Can I say something really quick about
Please.
these two artists?
Oh yeah,
So,
I'd love to.
I've worked with both of these artists, and I find them inspiring and fearless and generous, and that's why I wanted them to be part of this tonight. And I feel a kindred spirit with both of them and admire them probably more than they know. And I'll give you this as an example. You could give them both like a little twig or something, and within an hour, Cellista will have fashioned a cello out of it and written 20 concertos for it. And Robert would have likely taught the twig to dance and have performances planned for the next 2 months. So that's why these two awesome artists are here tonight.
It's fantastic. And PC, I noticed that you seem to be in an elevator there.
Yes, I am, Sean. Ask me how I'm doing in the elevator.
What's life like there in the elevator, PC?
You know, it has its ups and downs.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. We had to get there at some point.
Yeah.
I guess I want to throw open with just sort of a very, I guess, back to down to the meat question. So I'll just ask each of you, how are you staying afloat and making money and being able to put food on the table while since the pandemic started and everything changed for you as artists? Anybody want to jump in and start in on that?
Cellista, you want to start?
Everyone's scared to be the first one.
Okay, I'll go. Okay. Geez. So I remember when we went into shelter in place in the Bay Area, I think I watched overnight while I think I lost like $40,000 just like that. Because, all the gigs, they were just, they were done. And I usually do my bookings about a year out. You have your weddings, your corporate things, recording sessions, live performance. So that was pretty astounding. So I think the cool thing about music that people don't always realize is that we actually have a lot of revenue streams. So there are ways to sort of dip into, so for instance, building out your teaching studio. I've been doing a lot more film scoring, which is nice because that becomes passive income at some point with your sync licenses, doing more commissions and that kind of thing. But it's not easy right now. I think for most of my colleagues, it's extraordinarily difficult. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else want to chime in, or you feel basically the same?
Well, I'd say I'm because I'm an independent artist, but also have the company. And for me, when this started, I have somewhere usually between 8 and 12 dancers that I employ, and whoever the staff folks might be. And so when this happened, we were in the middle of our season, 25th season. And things went away, and I had made commitments to make sure that people would continue to work. And so that's how we wound up sort of going online. We kind of, in trying to make sure that those commitments were honored, because the relationships that we have in the art world aren't like someone comes in the door at 9 and then leaves at 5. Those are not the kind of relationships you have. So, all of us worked really hard to make sure things sort of continued moving forward. There were a lot of special grants that we applied for. We started, as Cellista was saying, we started the online school, and we're just sort of plugging along the way that you do, and making sure all these things are happening. Doing a lot of teaching online, things like that. So.
Yeah, that seems to be the way a lot of people are going. PC, did you have anything to add to all that?
I think the impact on musicians has been really, really great, and dancers. I think it's been, really, really great and devastating for some people. I'm fortunate because I have a few different things going on where I run education programs for a venue also in Berkeley at the Freight Salvage, and I've been engaged a lot with commissions and with different. I've put out a bunch of singles during the pandemic, and those things have helped. But for some people, especially I think, and Cellista, I think you probably know we know some of the same people in the same position, but people who don't compose or don't make their own work, but are primarily players in a specific type of ensemble or orchestral situation, and they can't perform. And so it's really difficult if they're not, if they don't teach and don't have a career as an artist where they're creating their own work and distributing it in some way. It sort of puts a stranglehold on their movements musically, and I think it's challenged some people to the point where they've probably made some breakthroughs, and for other people it's been really, really discouraging. So I consider myself in a fortunate position, but I know many of my colleagues have suffered a bit more.
Yeah, I think that's in broad strokes. I think that covers everyone. So yeah, very true. So I kind of wanted to start with that, just because that's a thing that sometimes gets overlooked. People talk about, oh, this is how things affected my artistic output or my approach. I just wanted to make sure that we're talking about people actually being able to eat and or be able to continue in their chosen career and not have to go work at Trader Joe's or something. Let's see. So now that we've kind of gotten that out of the way, maybe we can talk a little bit more about what sort of responses you as individuals have had. I mean, we've talked about teaching. We talked about moving to other revenue streams and stuff. Maybe we can talk about how it may have changed your actual practice as a performer, or as a choreographer, as a composer, as all those hats that you wear. What may have changed during this last year or so? If anyone wants to pick up that one.
I think for me, a lot has changed in terms of, I'm doing so much stuff alone, and it's definitely different for musicians because, I mean, you usually are in a room with people creating, and there's definitely a vibe, and we talked about this before the feed started, but Robert was talking about how, we're doing this Zoom and we're doing this stuff virtually, but the energy exchange is totally different when you're when you're online and virtual, as opposed to being in the room with someone creating and feeling the energy. It's also different as a performer. Like right now, I don't see the people that are watching this, and I didn't see their reaction to. I don't know if they laughed. I don't know what the reaction was. So the energy exchange is not there, and I think it affects the way you hold yourself and the way you sort of do things. And for me also, it's different physically, because you don't have that. It's that when you're on a stage and there's lights and and you're moving and you're exerting yourself to this point of exhaustion. It's very different from you have a camera on you and you're doing kind of nice things in front of it.
Right.
It's
antiseptic or something. Yeah.
It feels different, and or even when you're creating video work the best you can, and I think it makes you think about the best possible ways your work can be delivered, and what's the best way you can create work and get it to people right now.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's anything about any changes that you've made in your practice, your approach, that might persist even after the pandemic is over and we're all out in the world again?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's kind of one of the things I'd like to get at today is, what things are going to stick or what things are going to stay. Because I think some things are, in this era, or once the pandemic is over, how are concert halls going to do things? How are any venue? Right. How are they going to do things? Are they going to have, vaccination checks at the door? Like, what sorts of protocols going? Because I'm fortunate because I work at a venue and I kind of hear the conversations about these sorts of things, and but those are all things that we'll have to consider going forward. Like, how will we best present our work and keep things going in a world that often devalues our work? I mentioned Spotify earlier, and I don't know if I don't know if Cellista wants to get into that, but I am not a fan of that platform, and I understand it, and I understand why musicians use it, but I think there are many other ways where you can support independent musicians and help them get paid more adequately.
Well, Cellista, since you were name checked, maybe I'll draw you into if you want to talk about Spotify, feel free, or any other issues we touched on.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm not going to talk about Spotify.
That's fine. Well, you have performed mostly as a solo artist, correct?
Yeah. So, gosh, I feel like I don't feel like a cellist. So cello is my day job.
Mm-hmm.
It enables me to produce pretty weird avant-garde theater.
Sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I work in a lot of different disciplines.
Right.
But, as I was getting ready today for this panel, I was kind of just thinking about the pandemic in general and just the effect it's had on me and my colleagues. And I think the pandemic sort of, it illuminated these existing inequities that were already there, and that
Yes.
working musicians and artists, we were already navigating. And because everything, especially in the Bay Area where I lived for 10 years, because arts is in such a precarious place, it just took something like a pandemic to almost eradicate it, right? Because there were no structural foundation to prevent it from getting swept away already. So all it really did was illuminate existing problems. And that's hard, because I feel like I was watching colleagues already suffering. And I remember just in putting on my last stage poem, Transfigurations, this is just prior to the pandemic. I was doing a national tour for it. I was about to do an international tour. I had a sold out date in LA we were preparing for on March 27th. We had our dress rehearsal.
There you go. Mm-hmm.
And then it was gone.
Wow.
But what I do remember prior to the pandemic was that just trying to have a process and a craft in the Bay Area as an artist is nearly impossible. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but a lot of it's just these structural problems. For instance, affordability. So you're trying to rehearse and find affordable spaces to actually develop a work, something that should be valued and is just part of the art. And it's almost impossible. So it's like the pandemic just exposed a nasty truth that was already there, right? Yes. And I think, it's hard, right? It's, yeah.
It's definitely not easy out there. I remember when I took my very first music class when I was an undergrad at UC Berkeley in let's just say sometime in the 80s. My composition teacher said, the best piece of advice I can give you if you want to become a musician is marry a lawyer. And I didn't do that, but I took that advice to heart, and I think that's something that we all kind of have to carry with us if you're going to be an artist, especially in a place like the Bay Area.
But that's
not easy.
Not fair, though. I think,
of course it isn't.
But I think that, as PC said, artists are sort of prophets, but artists also have an easy time of sort of representing marginalized voices in a community at large, right? So if there are no artists within a community, say in downtown San Jose where I was living, isn't that symptomatic of the health of the community? Doesn't that indicate something else going on, that maybe it's not affordable, that there's not basic structures in place to keep the community in place? Artists are signifiers of the health of a community. They're important for that reason. They represent more than just artists. They represent the community as a whole.
Absolutely true. Absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about what? Obviously, your touring schedule went from lots of touring days to nothing, but in terms of other ways it might have informed your practice as an artist, what's changed about the way you're producing new work and things like that?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. My work is very much based on, it's very participatory, and it's very reliant on the audience as a witness. to my work. And I think for me, just to point back at affordability, there were a lot of cases where I was unable to rehearse with my musicians until concert dates. What I'm really missing in the pandemic, though, is my audience sitting with me, reflecting back to me what I'm doing. And so I found as I've had to transfigure my own work into a virtual world that it's kind of, I miss my audience, and that's hard. But one thing I've noticed is I'm almost liberated in some ways from the audience gaze, and I'm able to sort of sit with my work and encounter it in a new way on my own and develop it in my own way. And in some ways, I think this is weird, but one gift of the pandemic is that it's given working musicians what we never had before, and that's time.
Yes.
So I'm trying to use that to my advantage, despite I really wish this thing was over.
I think everyone probably shares that. And Robert, can you tell us maybe you respond to anything anyone else has said, but if you have particular things that have changed about your practice as an artist, things that you are doing differently now than you did before.
Well, I think is my mic on?
Yep, we're here.
I think the capture is different.
Okay.
And that is in when making your work, there are things that when you're live with the people that you're creating your work with, there are things that you let slip by, and there are things that you let happen in the room because you know that the tensile strength of the whole will capture certain kinds of things. But so the capture is different. The capture when you're creating something on digitally or online is you kind of have to narrow it down to that one thing that is going to be acceptable for you in the moment. I don't mean acceptable in terms of how people see it or how it's going to be received, but for you in that moment, that this particular thing is the thing that's acceptable, rather than letting any number of things live in the room for some period of time because you're giving it the ability to grow. And so what you find is there's a different, yes, on one end you do have more time because you're not driving to the studio or something like that or walking to the studio. But on the other hand, once you get there, there's a different kind of pressure in making sure that the work is really representative of whatever it is that you're after. And so there's both sort of a freedom in that and a more craftsperson-like look at how you're creating the work. Yeah, I was just sort of thinking about what was being said. I think the notion of limitations is different if you want to think about the possibility for scope, then maybe you aren't limited in the same way. But then if you don't understand this world, and some of us who are over the age of 21 don't understand this world in the way that some of the younger folks do, in that we don't have the facility with it, right? So we're used to, you're used to picking up a cello, or you're used to picking up a bass, or I'm used to moving bodies around, and those are the things we work with and we stare at, and then we pull what's human and what means something to us and maybe means something to other people out of those things. The difference now is that people who are 14, 15, 16 do that in this electronic digital media in a way that we're not used to. So in a way, I think artists are a little put back. I mean, normally we think of ourselves as being open and ready to jump into anything, but I think we're a little pushed back off of not having the facility with this new tool, this paint, this new canvas that we might have had. Even if you're a filmmaker in this particular moment, I think is different because we don't have the facility in the same way. We don't understand how to communicate with the audience in the same way. We don't understand necessarily with the nuances. We were talking before we started streaming about the nuances of a moment. So if I sit here and I watch you and you're flattened in a way by what's happening digitally, I don't have any understanding really of what's happening in your life or in the room. Or if PC's in a elevator, I have a different kind of relationship to PC in the elevator. It says to me, to a certain extent, he doesn't want me in his world, which is beautiful because then I have more information about PC than I might. And then, Sean, I imagine you're not actually in the
I
museum
am not.
behind you. So there are certain parts, there's certain things that we get to pick up on as artists, because we're here if we try to be sensitive to them, and other things that we don't. So I'm sitting here in my office, uh, not because it's the most comfortable thing, but because I'm tired of having people in my home, right? And when we do, and when we do this thing, you come into my home, right? And when I turn it off, I don't get to just turn you off. I have to like shake you off for a little bit before I go
Right. Uh-huh.
back into my life. And so
That's
I think those are the kinds of things that we deal with in a moment like this.
very true. PC, you look like you might have wanted to respond to something there.
Yeah, when he mentioned limitations, it just reminded me that that's one of the things I've actually responded well to. Is I love and have a lot of experience working in recording studios. It was my life for a long time was just working in recording studios, um, and now I don't go in them. And when I get commissioned for pieces or when I'm creating new work, I do not have access to the gear and the engineers that I work with normally. So I have, a couple of mics here, and I have a limited amount of gear to get a recording that I am satisfied with. I do then pass it on to engineers that I trust to shine it up. But in terms of the tracking, I'm limited here, and it's been strangely liberating to go, okay, well, I don't have, I don't have an endless selection of mics and effects. I don't have every drum set possible. I don't have every synth possible. I don't have a lot of the things that I would have in the types of studios where I like to work. But I've enjoyed that part of it, and that was I know that wasn't the main gist of what Robert was saying, but the limitations thing got me thinking about how that's been a positive thing for me, is evaluating what I do have here and going, okay, what excellent thing can I do with the tools I have right in front of me?
That's great. I wonder if, again, this is sort of a question I hope each of you can talk about a little bit. And we've touched on it a little already, but to talk about the idea of how collaboration works now, how you work either with other individual artists or groups, or in Robert's case, obviously you're used to choreographing for it could be any number of dancers in your company or another company, PC or Cellista working with other musicians, or even working in Cellista in your case with stage producers and other folks who do your live events and things like that. How has all that changed, and what are you able to do? What are you unable to do? What's new? What's different? Anyone who feels like jumping in, feel free.
Well, I'm just going to jump in on
Yeah.
the limitations thing, and I think I might be one of the people that PC might, and maybe Cellista sort of come to hate, and that I've discovered the online music studio thing, right? So I download all of these plugins and whatnot, and I've got this platform and that platform to make things. So I don't make calls as often, and I'm not in as constant contact with collaborators as I once was. So I was the guy that would call you up at 3 o'clock in the morning going, you know what, I had this idea, and it's got to be on count 192 rather than count 192 and a half, where we do this thing and I need a different color here. And so the isolation has sort of pushed me into a place where I have to begin to have another idea, another notion, another sort of intimacy with what it is that my collaborators do. I've got about 3 projects that I'm working towards. Ideally, that'll be done in about 6 months from now. But one of my collaborators is I think he's in Italy, stuck in Italy. Right. So I can't, I guess I could Skype him or whatever, but I can't call him up all the time. And and I don't know what's going on in his life right now. So we can't sit down and have coffee and say, wow, the tone of the country has changed in the last week and a half from
Right.
2 weeks ago. in such in an easier way. So I think collaboration. I'm not sure this answers your question, but I think collaboration is as much about the person as it is about how you collaborate and what the person is going through. Because once you've chosen to collaborate with someone, you've already sort of signed off on what they can do. Like, you are wonderful. Click. Let's do this thing. That's when it starts to get real. That's when it gets intimate. That's when you start to sort of find out things and have real conversations. So, I mean, that's what I would say about the notion of collaboration is like, now I don't get to go and sit down with you and have coffee for an hour and talk about things or just bug you in the same way, because there's another level of respect for people's um, the delicacy of people's mental, emotional privacy that you don't sort of want to push it in a way because when you're in a collaboration with someone, you got to sometimes look them in the eye and shake them, and then they shake you back, and or they whisper in your ear, that was really wonderful, but why don't we try this? And there are all kinds of things that are going on, and we can't do those in the same way. So.
Very true. How has it been for you working with dancers and actually, teaching new dances or collaborating on new dances and things like that?
Well, as I said, fortunately, I think that was so. It's fortunately I have a number of dancers that I've worked with over some period of time. So we have like musicians have a language that they have written. Dancers' language is the body, but you also have the language that you have when you're in the studio. And so when you work with someone for a while, I think we have something that you might be able to show if you want to. Um,
Yeah, Dave, talking to our video producer, Dave Taylor, if you can cue that clip up, well, maybe Robert can introduce this piece called "The Silence of the Black Artist."
yeah, and in short, what happens is in a situation like this, if I send prompts to someone and I say I want you to relive this moment from this thing, then they've got something they can hold on to and push forward. The Silence of the Black Artist an it is excised from something a benefit that we did during the first, I think, 2 or 3 weeks of the shutdown for the San Francisco public schools because they really need help even now, especially now since we just heard today. I guess they're not opening for the rest of the year. Oh my God! Right, so that's a year and a half when kids are out of school. That's insane. All right, so that's another thing. But that's a completely other thing. But this is excised from that, and that's what I would say.
All right, we'll share that video now. All right, welcome back. So, what a compelling piece. So, thank you very much for bringing that clip to us and letting us share it here as part of tonight. And yeah, that just shows so many of the points we've been making and things we've been talking about. We've got it's a solo artist, a solo dancer, of course, because you're not going to have a collaboration with 12 people on a stage or something. It's someone, a work which I assume the two of you worked on together, but remotely probably, and pre-recorded music, and all these things kind of come into play that we've been talking about. Yeah. Is there anything else about the piece you wanted to touch on? I mean,
No, just that that is in this environment, that is the simplest way to sort of get something out, and that's the most direct way, working with people that you have known. And we're also doing something called RMK around the USA, where I work with a whole bunch of people who I do not know, and you don't have that shorthand. So if PC and I were gonna talk about something, and say we've had a couple of things together, and I might say it might be like like the piece about the murder of children, and we'll say, okay, then what we know automatically is PC might say, okay, so it's that tone, and I'll say, yeah, it's that tone. But with folks, and then you get the whole thing, because he's seen something, I know the sound of it, and we know what those things are together. But then when you work with people in this environment who you haven't worked with before, you just do not have shorthand.
Right. Yeah. So you're kind of creating a new language as you go, and it has to be this sort of more stilted one that goes through these things like video conferences and stuff, where you don't get to be in the same room. Very interesting. So I wanted to bring Cellista in on this too, about this idea about collaboration, how you work with other artists, whether it's musicians or other people that you work with professionally. What kind of things have changed for you?
Geez. So I think in general, for me, when I'm doing collaborative art, I tend to be very hands off, and because I really believe that if the vision is strong enough and you choose collaborators who understand that vision, you can let them go and they'll come back, and it will make sense. The last highly collaborative project I did was called Rage. I released that in May. So Rage, just to give a background, my father was a professor of philosophy for many years at the University of Denver, and this year he wanted me to publish one of his books. So I published that through my publishing company. And then I decided I wanted to create a musical response to it. So I commissioned a few composers to create responses for the chapters, and PC was one of those composers. And PC, I don't even remember how I approached you, besides saying like, hey, I like you. Will you work with me? I don't.
You sent me the concept and said, hey, I'm doing this thing, and it responds to this philosophy book, and I'd like you to construct your track out of noise. And I said, what? No one had asked me to do that before, and I appreciated that you noticed that I might want to do something like that.
Yeah.
So that was a wonderful project.
I was happy with that project, and just through that, also I decided from there that I really wanted to direct a dance film. So I took all of the compositions, and I carefully chose dancers. I got a ballerina, I had modern dancers, I had a butoh dancer, all people who I've encountered their work or worked with, so I know how they process. I simply gave them the track. I gave them a set of prompts and physical gestures, and then I told them, film against a neutral wall, high res, here's your deadline, here's your check, thank you. And we put together a really gorgeous, highly experimental, very weird dance film, about 30 minutes long. I would call it a little dance suite, made of like a noise dance suite based on a book of philosophy. And I think it just organically built. But I was thinking during the pandemic, one thing it allowed me to do was become more organized, because suddenly you have to express succinctly what you need from someone. And so I became a better project manager because of the pandemic. I realized how to approach people and say what I need, and give them instructions that they can interpret well and still have their creativity so they can retain their own artistic vision. Because I don't want to task my collaborators, right? It's about coming together and kind of juxtaposing our ideas, illuminating each other.
Oh, very interesting. That's great. Terrific. I'll mention to our viewers from home once again that if you have questions or comments that you want to type into the chat box, I see it's been very active here on the YouTube chat box. Just if you have anything that you'd like me to ask these assembled artists today, feel free to type things in there, and we'll get to them in a little bit. Any other things that anyone wanted to bring up that we haven't covered yet? I always have more questions, but is there any? I don't want to steamroll over you all if there are things you wanted to make sure we touched on.
I would just echo what Robert and Cellista both said. It's a little different when it's all sending files back and forth, and it's true. You do have to succinctly talk about what it is you're looking for, or in an email or in a text or in a Zoom call or whatever it is. So it's different in that sense, and nothing beats being right there with someone, and I think that's probably the biggest thing. And I think that's one of the reasons why I get along with both of these artists really well. Is I think we all of us believe in picking the right collaborator, and I like Cellista's way of phrasing it, and not tasking them, but saying, and like Robert said, I like your stuff. Let's work together in some way. And I think that's the best way. And that's when, discernment comes in as the lead artist, where you're like, okay, who are these people that I want to work with? And who do I trust with this vision I've come up with? Because, sometimes it can go wrong.
Yeah.
It can go wrong if your discernment skills aren't top shelf. It can go wrong. So, that's why it's important, I think, to have, and people don't think about that a lot in terms of the skills that artists have, but it's a discerning thing to do, to be a leader and to be someone with a vision that's trying to execute and curating collaborators.
Right. I think there's a difference between, maybe there's a little confusion generally, the difference between commissioning something and having that dynamic and collaborating with someone, and then depending on what your needs are inside a collaboration, because some people don't want to collaborate, and some people think that the collaboration middle ground is the worst place to go, and that you're going to get energy from this clash and this bit of fire. And some folks think, no, we just need to be able to sort of meld into each other, and I'll be malleable. And then, there are all kinds of things in between, but you do need to have an understanding of how these folks want to work, and how they see you and how you see them. And there has got to be respect there.
Absolutely. So I'm going to turn to one of the questions that came through. In NPC, I think you may know this person. It's Belinda Munoz. She asks, building on Cellista's remarks, it'd be interesting to hear what skills the panelists have had the opportunity or been forced to hone during the pandemic. Things you wouldn't have otherwise needed to learn or teach yourself or get better at. Anything else come to mind?
For me, it's video editing.
Video editing, yeah.
It's just, it goes back to what we first
It's an unforgiving medium for sure.
Yeah, because, I've edited a bunch of, videos before, but like the thing for I Remember Her, like it's really exacting stuff, and there's all the sound design elements and stuff, and it's not a natural thing. I used to always say I don't have a lot of visual skills. I have some other skills, but visuals I've always felt a little funny about. I've always felt like, that's artistically something that I struggle with a little bit. So working on these videos, and specifically working on I Remember Her, was a great exercise in honing this new thing of, okay, as film editor, what are these choices I need to make? Because it's pretty different from writing the story, sound designing the story, recording the different elements, And then now it's like, oh, there's this other thing that, you know, normally I might bring to someone else and say, please, you know, here's a list of priorities, have at it. But here it was more like, okay, I gotta figure this out. And it's good. It feels good to have that extra skill in the toolbox. And that, again, that's another one of those positive things that has come about.
Cool. Robert, or I mean, Cellista, you already talked a little bit, but if anything else occurs to you, I'd love to hear from either of you.
I think your skill as a director. I mean, the skills directing something, and I don't know that people think of choreographers as being directors, but I think this thing with being on dealing with video and being on film, the directorial skills are different. They're not the same. You lean more toward, at least I do, more toward the narrative and sort of the clarity of the moment as opposed to uh, interpretation and sort of the freedom of vision. I think that's. I mean, I think that's it. I mean, I think I'm like everyone here. I write. I create sound. I make the dances, and so we all have a lot of things that we do. It's that we in this moment have to dig deeper uh, to make the things happen. So
Very, very true. So, Lisa, is there anything else you wanted to add to what you'd said before? Or?
Um, I mean, I think like everyone else, I've just had to learn how to do more on my own and refining that process, especially just recording at home for sure, because that's how I'm generating quite a bit of revenue right now.
Mhm.
And of course, just video editing, I think everyone's learning that now. So yeah, just what everyone else is going through, I am too.
Yeah. I'm turning back to the chat here and finding some other questions. There's one here from Daniel Zemke. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. He says, given that the pandemic has affected your creative process, is there anything that you want to take with you when it's all over? In other words, any silver lining? You've talked about a couple of these before, but anything else maybe you haven't mentioned yet that would be a thing that you want to continue to do in the future, even after this is all over?
Well, I'd love to have more gigs where you don't have to load anything.
Yes, there you go. I
But,
like this
you
for
know,
that.
that's hard.
I don't know how realistic that is. I
In- I would say I'm dying to get back into the flesh and blood experience. I mean, it's really really serious withdrawal for I think people who work in the way that I do. And you go in the room and you actually put your hands on someone else's body, and maybe their sweat hits you in the face, and they smell like they haven't showered or whatever. I mean, those are terrible things to say, but you walk in the room, and the room is thick with that sort of humidity of human the heat that comes off human bodies, and it sounds like, oh, how could you possibly miss that? But you do, and that's not something I'm going to take that I'm going to want to bring back in, but it is the thing that I miss. I mean, there's going to be a lot of things that we take back in. We're going to figure out how to communicate in different ways. We'll be more sensitive about certain things. And I said earlier, we're having this thing like the experience we had when we all went over to email from talking on the phone. We're figuring out how to communicate in a different way. But I'm dying to go in a room with a whole bunch of people and see someone off screen smile or frown or hear them fart. Uh, I'm dying for that. So that's a weird thing to say, but that's
No, it's true. It's human bonding and real human experience, right? Got another really nice question here from Kimi Sugioka. I hope I'm getting that right. Do any of you produce live Zoom work during the pandemic? And if so, have you found any techniques or strategies that you find successful in this sort of one-on-one vacuum of the pandemic? Any of you
yes,
done anything just strictly for Zoom or strictly for that's live but
but performative or
mediated in this way? Have you all been done pre-recorded work or?
I've done both pre-recorded panels and some performances, and as well as performances. I know one of them happened really early on, and I didn't have my bearings yet on what to do. So, and it was for a university, And so what I ended up doing was doing a production workshop where I kind of showed how I built a track. And so it was quite a bit of playing music, showing how I build something, showing the screen of what I'm doing, how the different elements add up, and playing a little bit while they're watching. So that was just me kind of getting my bearings on things. And during, over this whole past time, I've become, more comfortable, like, just bothering to get a mic like the mic that's right in front of me right now has helped a lot in terms of how I know I'm going to sound, because I get very concerned about the sound of the music and the sound of my voice as it's going out. So it's still, for me, it's still evolving, and I'm grateful to that Zoom has, changed some of their technology so that it's more possible to get a decent sound on Zoom. And of course, there's other technology like Jackdrip, which people are using to jam together and do other things. And it's something I'm watching really closely, both as a musician, performer, and as an educator. But those, it's been, for me, it's been kind of making sure it's a hybrid of teaching, talking, and playing, because I'm still not totally convinced that it's compelling to watch a solo musician on Zoom for 40 an hour. I think you have to do some other things to keep people engaged, and you owe that to them if they're if they're spending this time doing another Zoom, because most likely they've been Zooming all day already. So I think it's good to offer people some different things when you're doing things online.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. I saw another question here. This person said, I would like to ask Robert if he finds the dancers he works with are more or less motivated in the current climate, or is it not any issues or things no different?
I think the dancers are hungry for the kinds of experiences that they walk into a studio or into any kind of creative environment for. Right. So if they're motivated, they're absolutely motivated. Maybe they're more motivated because they're being starved of the opportunity to do this in the way that they understand. And sort of take a step back and to speak to the previous question and the one that was just asked. We haven't done a live thing. I mean, I do a lot of teaching and things like that online, but the concern for PC's talking about sound quality and whatnot. This concern for someone that works with their bodies or someone who's teaching or creating for people who work with their bodies is that the environments that people are creating in are vastly different. So I'm in my office, I've got shoes on, maybe cotton socks on a carpet over cement. And for the most part, we have very refined, if we're in the concert dance realm, we have very refined environments that we go into. It's a sanded wood floor with flat walls, nothing's in the way, a mirror in front that helps you to deal with proportion, sound that's coming from ideally more than 2 or 3 directions. And there's a sort of balance to that. But if you're doing something live with folks who you're trying to create, it's nearly dangerous to do that with them if you don't understand the environment that they're in, really, or if you're on grass outside, and to do it remotely is even scarier. So I'm always nervous about that. We've created a lot of things, but we do it in the way that PC was saying, in a way with sort of prompts. Then we gather all this stuff, and then we go to the environment and remanage the work in the environment so that it's safe, and then move it forward. There was probably more information than you wanted, but I just needed to speak to that really sort of particular thing when you're talking about sound and how you're going to manage that. That's so incredibly important to musicians and composers, and dancers. Have one body. You might have your, at least, and maybe this is. Hopefully I don't step on anyone's toes, but you may have your favorite instrument, but you might be able to go out and get another, this, that, or the other. But if you break someone's body, that's it. So that's our concern.
Yeah, absolutely. You only get the one. So I guess maybe we'll start thinking about wrapping up a little bit, and maybe what I'll do is throw out a question like, imagine that it's I don't know, it's 2027 or something. We're well past all this, and what are the things that you've carried with you, or how would you go back? How would you describe this time? This pandemic time. That's the 2020 time. What would you say were the sort of the key elements that changed what your artistic output and process was?
That's a heavy question, Sean. um, the For me, it's tumult. This whole 2020 has been a tumultuous year, just all the way around. And I have a 14-year-old son, and who has been going to school online for a while now. And I think this experience, both living through the Trump era and living through the pandemic, is going to define my son's generation. Like, they will constantly be asked about what was that like, and we tell him, he has two journals, and we tell him journal every day, because the rest of your life, people are going to be asking you about this. And I look back and I think, like, at how people are going to be. There's going to be endless amounts of work created around this, from films to books, and and other sorts of creative work that responds to this, that analyzes this era. And I think for me, it's some of the obvious human lessons, right? Of to hold your loved ones close, and cherish them, things like that. These little things where you don't know when someone in your family or someone close to you may take ill because of something like this, and you don't know when your occupation might be in danger, when your particular mode of work and might suddenly be you can't do it. So I think it makes us take into consideration the preciousness of all these things, and I think that's hopefully the value that we get, the human value from going through all this and going through that hell. We go back to the title of this whole thing, going through that hell and emerging as stronger people, as hopefully better individuals in some way.
Cellista, do you have any thoughts about kind of how you'll talk about this era when it's 6, 7, 8 years down the track?
Yeah. Oh, PC, I was just thinking earlier on, you mentioned artists as the ones who document. I think as prophets, it's actually prophecy is sort of a reflection of the now and channeling it into a future. I was thinking of how important it is. This is slightly off the question, but how important it is that artists do reflect their communities and the times they live in,
Yes.
and with a firm look back on the past in order to move forward. I think just speaking in the present. I think I prefer to speak in the present right now, because it is for me a very day by day sort of feeling. Some days are just really hard. I think that the pandemic, the Trump era, all these different sorts of wounds, traumas, ruptures, fragments, they're cementing my wants and my needs, and it's making clear my own vision. Those ruptures are giving me clarity. So I don't think that I can ever really say what I think it will look like, but I can tell you right now that I have a firm grasp of who I am right now and what I want.
Mm-hmm. Is that a feeling you think may not have been true if it weren't for all the trauma of this year and the past few years?
Yeah, those traumas are signifiers.
Yeah, for sure. Great. And Robert, did you have any thoughts about how you might characterize this time in a future time?
I don't. I guess I think of it. I mean, it's a year that had its challenges, but I guess I think of it in in the way that it's just sort of part of life, and that at some point we'll file it away and we'll use it the way artists use things. So when I think it was 5 or 6, my first dog got hit and killed, so that is still in my brain. And then I went to Europe with my not my then fiance, but my now wife, and we sat down in some little cafe, or maybe we went to Italy. We sat down in some little cafe, and we had a sandwich, panini, and we had a sandwich that was the most incredible sandwich we've ever had in our lives. And we talk about that, and I've been married now for 22 years, and this is before we got married. We still talk about that sandwich. So at some point, 2020 will be like that, right? It will be encapsulated, and there'll be a very specific joy or sadness or something that's prickly or something that's wonderful and soft about it. You'll remember somebody that you lost, and it won't be about the pain. It'll be about the fact that that person was a wonderful person in your life. And so all of that stuff will cohere in a way, and it will become part of what you pull on to create whatever it is that you create. 2020 wasn't a great year. Trump sucked. Schools were closed, but I got time to spend with my children and my wife, and I got to read more. And so all of these things sort of come together. And so I can't answer that question except to say, PC said journal every day. We're talking about sort of being in the moment and really being yourself. Those are the things that make up what we do.
Well, great. I think that's a great place to end, unless anyone wants to chime in with one last little tidbit or something. I'm not seeing any takers. So all that remains, I guess, is for me to thank these 3 amazing guests: PC Muñoz, Cellista, and Robert Moses. It couldn't have been a more exciting and vibrant conversation. So thank you all for coming and being, really present and thoughtful. It just means so much. And thank you to our audience, everyone who's watching right now. I'll say one more time: please subscribe to the Bamfo channel. We have a lot of exciting things going on. Follow us and all those things you're supposed to do. And we'll be back with more exciting events like this monthly. But thank the 3 of you. I just want to thank the 3 of you one more time because this was just a terrific panel. I think of kind of sort of the first glimmers of hope that we're going to come out of this pandemic. So this is a great time to start thinking about what everything means to us and what it has meant to us. So I appreciate all your candor and your personal stories and everything that you've shared tonight. It's been really terrific.
Thanks a lot, Sean.
Thank you.
And
Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you too. I'm going to thank, as always, our intrepid video producer, Dave Taylor, and the rest of the staff at BAM PFA for putting together this great show. And to all of you out there, have a lovely night, and we'll see you back here again soon.
Bye, guys. Thank you.